It is great to be with all of you again today, and I've always been impressed with the crowd whenever I come up for this event. I don't think it's ever been bigger than it is today. So thank all of you for taking time to come out and see what your chamber, what your business community's been about, and it's my pleasure to be back up here speaking to you again. Tanya, thank you very much for the introduction. And Roy, I don't know what kind of coffee you had today, but or what might be in that King's water that you're drinking, but we all ought to get some of that. And Friday and Stacy and Shane, thank y'all very much for your kind words and the partnership that we've had, that we've enjoyed. I appreciate the invitation to be back up here today. I've had a number of events in Monroe, and I still have some to go when this is over. But my day started by touring VCOM on the beautiful campus there of ULM. And of course, I was there for the groundbreaking. That's the first time I've been back. What a beautiful facility and a tremendous investment in this part of our state. And I'm not talking about so much in the building, although it's really nice. It's the young women and men who are being educated and trained to be doctors who are going to stay right here in Louisiana and provide medical care in rural areas, in areas that are today underserved. And by the way, those students look like the state of Louisiana. And I am so proud of what is happening there at VCOM. We did the Biomedical Research and Innovation Park groundbreaking today. I'll talk a little more about that. That is extremely positive for Monroe and Northeast Louisiana as well. And then after this, I'll be going to the historic Cooley House. I think it's coffee at the Cooley House today. All right. Would you bring some of yours?
Yeah, I will.
All right. So it's always great to be here. And I think I've made all of the chamber meetings that were held. I think there may have been a year or so when we didn't do them during COVID. But I'm also really pleased to be here today when we have so much good news. And let me be the first to tell you, we still have our fair share of challenges, and maybe more than our fair share. But there are a lot of things that are going well in Louisiana today, too, and I want to share some of that with you, and some of which we have some control over and some we don't. But I am very happy to be standing up here today to tell you we have not had a storm this hurricane season in the great state of Louisiana, unlike the previous several years. And we don't really get a say in that, except that we do get to pray. And I will tell you, I have prayed every single day that we would not have one. Of course, we have friends in Florida that really took it on the chin. But you should know that your state sent an awful lot of people and equipment over there to help the folks in Florida. And the governor there, the senators, they've all expressed support, appreciation to me that they asked me to let the people of Louisiana know, so I'm doing that now. And, you know, we've been challenged over the last several years, you know, with the pandemic, with 4 hurricanes, 2 of them to be the strongest to ever hit our state, and other things. But we've actually set all-time lows for unemployment each of the last 4 months. And so today, as we gather here, and whether you're looking at seasonally adjusted or not seasonally adjusted rates, the unemployment rates in the state of Louisiana are the lowest they have ever been. And I want to thank the business community for making that possible. We have regained every job lost during the pandemic. And just as we start making all of this progress, the Fed is raising interest rates to soften the labor market because they think it's contributing to the inflation. So it's good news on the one hand, but we know that there are forces at work trying to soften that labor market. But we're going to do everything we can in the state of Louisiana to connect people with good paying jobs and careers. And there's never been a better time to do that than right now. Louisiana has experienced 5 consecutive years of growing capital investment and job growth. And in fact, the economic development projects and investment that we announced last year in 2021 represented right at $21 billion in capital investment in our state. That's one of the largest numbers we've ever had in any given year. And I want to make sure that you all know that after my changes to the industrial tax exemption program, the annual investment in Louisiana by manufacturers has doubled. So we go from 100% exemption to 80%. We tie it to job creation, and we give the locals a say in whether or not the exemption is going to be granted, because not a single dollar of property tax comes to the state. And we make those changes, and the investments have doubled. And local government has realized $175 million more in revenue to help with local services, with the roads and bridges that they're building, with fire service, with police service, with education. So it's one of the really positive things that we've been able to do for Louisiana. We always knew that the program, as we changed it, remains extremely generous. And we have a lot of companies investing in Louisiana, taking advantage of it, but they're not taking advantage of Louisiana. And so I'm very proud of those changes. Diversification is obviously required if we're going to continue to drive the economic growth that we've been seeing. We're building on that. We're achieving that by building on existing strengths in sectors like advanced manufacturing, agribusiness, aviation, and aerospace, at the same time facilitating an investments in emerging sectors like clean energy and life sciences. Simply put, we've been an energy leader in Louisiana for over 100 years. If we want to be an energy leader in the next 3 decades, we are going to have to embrace the transition towards cleaner energy, because that's where the capital is moving. It's a function of what the markets are doing, and quite frankly, you see all the big oil and gas companies rebranding as energy companies, and they're announcing their own goals related to carbon emissions and so forth. And so that's where we need to be as a state, on a balanced, all of the above approach, understanding that fossil fuels are going to continue to be important to us and to the world. They will continue to be produced and so forth, and there's no better place to do that than right here in Louisiana. And that's the case that we're making all over the world as we seek additional investments in Louisiana, and we are seeing that is paying off. And by the way, Northeast Louisiana has been an important contributor to the overall growth. By staying on the cutting edge of those economic diversification trends. Over the last 2 years, LAD has announced 4 major economic development projects in the region, representing $713 million in capital investment and 892 new direct and indirect jobs. The strategic biofuels, Louisiana Green Fuels facility in Caldwell Parish on renewables will convert forest waste feedstock into cleaner burning renewable diesel. Its negative carbon footprint will move Louisiana closer to our net zero greenhouse gas emission goals while creating good paying jobs in Northeast Louisiana. And you know, anytime that you have a goal to reduce your overall emissions and get to net zero by 2030, if you can employ subtraction, it works a lot better. And this facility, because of the carbon intensity, will actually be carbon negative. And I'm excited about what is happening there, and we're working in close partnership with those folks to advance that particular project. Then today, we just came from the ULM Biomedical Research and Innovation Park right here in Ouachita Parish. That is an investment of more than $30 million. And it is probably the best example that I have seen as a governor of people coming together, state and local and federal, various funding sources, and doing it at record speed to embrace visionary leadership and a plan that is going to build on the strengths of this area. So I was very proud to participate in that, and when it's complete in 2025, BRIP will position Monroe as a leader in Louisiana's expanding life sciences sector by creating a business hub for bioscience startups and medical research facilities. 60,000 square feet of office space, laboratories, and research environments will serve as a magnet to larger biotech companies to invest in Northeast Louisiana. And the potential for new public-private partnerships with the ULM College of Pharmacy, the only publicly supported college of pharmacy in the state of Louisiana, and VCOM, but you also have Delta. And I'm just going to tell you, I'm excited about the collaboration, the cooperation. And our federal partners also played an important role with an infusion of funding through EDA that's making possible the work that's actually going to start out there very soon with the roadway in for ingress and egress. But of that $31 million or so, 2/3 of it's coming from the state of Louisiana through capital outlay and through matching the money for the EDA grant, and then there was actually a cash appropriation too this past session. And like everything else, whether it's your home or your business, there's a little inflation going on out there. So in order to build the project as it was conceived, and I'm committed to doing that, I can tell you we're going to find another $4 million because I don't want to downsize the scale of the project. And I look forward to working with your delegation to make sure that we do that as soon as possible. But I can tell you now it is possible because we did close out last year with yet another surplus. We are running excess in the current year, and we have our traditional capital outlay program as well. So we are going to get that done. I'm committed. That is one less meeting I have to have today because you don't have to sell me on that one. Okay. With so many exciting projects and partnerships already in place, the 14 LED certified industrial sites in the region are ready for development. We know that Northeast Louisiana truly is poised for continued growth. And we want people to have every opportunity for good paying jobs and careers here. We want people to be able to move here and take advantage of that. And more important than that, we want people to be able to stay here so that they don't have to feel like there are better opportunities somewhere else. And you make that a reality with significant and strategic investments like the ones we're making and that I've discussed and the ones that I'm going to discuss going forward. One of those things has to do with broadband access. When we studied rural Louisiana and what we needed to do to revitalize rural Louisiana, we went all over the state. And of course, we can always improve education and health care and transportation, economic development, and all those sorts of things. The one thing that people told us, if they wanted to be more successful as a small business person, if they wanted their farm to produce more profits, if they wanted to better educate their kids so they'd have access to more information and be able to do their homework, if you wanted access to telehealth, which is more important in rural Louisiana than anywhere else because you can cut out that transportation need, at least for a big number of your visits. The common thing there is high-speed internet that is affordable, being hooked up to every address in the state of Louisiana. And I want to tell you, we took that very, very seriously. And if you're not going to hear me say this very often, but I will tell you today, there is not another state better positioned than Louisiana because of the work that we have already done to close the digital divide by 2029. Other states are here copying our efforts. They're looking at our Gumbo grant program. They're looking at the Office for Connectivity that is part of the governor's office. They're trying to figure out how we are doing this. And I don't it's happening in my office, but I will tell you, we have a very talented group led by Vineeth Iyengar, and he is leading that effort. And I can assure you, we will close the digital divide by 2029. We're going to have affordable, true high-speed fiber internet at every address that wants it. And in addition to that, we're going to work, because just having it and being affordable, although really important, isn't enough. People have to know how to use it. So digital literacy skills, we're working on that as well. And then obviously the devices. But I'm excited about what we're doing. You all probably saw that we had an announcement up in this area with respect to $1.9 million for a Comcast gumbo grant that's going to get to about 400, I think, locations in Ouachita Parish. There'll be another $1 million in match for that. But just to put it in scale of what we're doing around Louisiana, we've announced $170 million in public investment to be matched by $80 million in private investment, $250 million total. That, by the way, that was American Rescue Plan funding, which is in common with some of the funding for the biomedical research part too. But that's $170 million in ARPA funds, matched by another $80 million, $250 million, 85,000 addresses across the state of Louisiana. And this is just the start. Because of the bipartisan infrastructure law, and by the way, we're the only state in the nation to have received money from that law for broadband because we were so far ahead. But we're going to map the whole country, the FCC is, and they're going to know every address in Louisiana that doesn't have internet available. And then we will get our share of those dollars, and that will be more than $1 billion. So I can tell you, I have every reason to believe we're well ahead of our target of 2029 to close that digital divide. And quite frankly, there's not another place in our state where it's going to make as big a difference, and very few in the country, than right here in Northeast Louisiana. And I know there's a couple snags we're working through, but I made sure that one of my very first announcements on this took place in East Carroll Parish. Because if there's a parish in our state that needs more opportunity, needs transformative investments, it's East Carroll Parish. So I'm excited about what we're doing there. I want to touch a little bit on some traditional infrastructure. Y'all have heard it discussed already today. The Kansas Lane Extension Project includes the construction of a new 4-lane boulevard from US 80 and Kansas Lane, which is the city-owned street, to the intersection of US 165 and Forsyth Bypass. As you know, this is a $50 million project. It's been in progress, some stage of development, for several years now. But the purpose is to provide alternative and more direct transportation routes for residential and commercial traffic to the north and south of Monroe, while relieving US 165 and US 80 of some of the congestion that you all are seeing there. So it's about increasing safety, economic competitiveness, and quality of life here in Monroe. It continues to progress. The project does, with the clearing and grubbing and utility relocation being completed earlier this year, and work, I think, started on that in 2020. Now, the construction is divided into 3 phases. Phase 1 from Old Sterlington Road to US 165 just went to bid. This phase will be funded using road transfer funds and state bonds, and is anticipated to cost approximately $10 million. Phase 2 is being developed as the second section from US 80 to Bon Air Drive, estimated to cost about $17 million, with similar funding sources as Phase 1, and we intend to go to bid in the fall of 2023 on that phase. And then Phase 3 will connect Phases 1 and 2 and is estimated to cost another $22 million. Now, I will tell you there's been a little inflation on those estimates too, but we are working through those as well. But the DOTD's road transfer program, and that's what Mayor Ellis was talking about finding ways together to move forward. it is playing a vital role in moving this project forward, with the city of Monroe utilizing road transfer credits toward funding for construction. And to that end, DOTD and the city of Monroe executed a cooperative endeavor agreement on June the 6th of 2022 that will transfer over 16 miles of state routes. This is after they are repaired and put in best possible condition, bridges and traffic signals to the city, and the city of Monroe will then apply their $22.4 million in road transfer credits to the Kansas Lane extension. So it was a way of me working with Monroe to give them a way to come up with their local match for the project that made it something that was affordable, that together we could do. And Friday, I want to thank you for working with me on that. Once completed, the Kansas Lane extension will provide regional multimodal connector between all segments of the economic and civic region, and will decrease traffic congestion along the major corridors of the city. Now, I'm going to hit some bullet points on some other transportation things. We have $10 million on passenger rail for North Louisiana. And I know we've got a number of legislators here. I want to thank them for working with us and with Sean Wilson and DOTD on that. We are also applying for a CRISI grant to plan that commuter rail. Recently in New Orleans, I met with the president and CEO of Amtrak to reaffirm our commitment to that. The Southern Rail Commission is having a meeting this week. And if we can establish a passenger rail link that basically runs from Dallas across North Louisiana on the I-20 corridor over to Meridian, Mississippi, and gets connected to Atlanta from there, I really think that that will be a shot in the arm too. And it's one of the few expansions of passenger rail where the studies suggest that at the very beginning, it will pay for itself. It won't require a subsidy. And so it's something that we obviously need to do. We do support it. I appreciate the funding that will help us to get started. Of course, a lot more investment has to take place because wherever it's going to stop, we're going to make sure we have to have stations and so forth. But we are committed to that. In addition to the rail, I wanted to mention we've got I-20 widening projects in Monroe. We've got overlay on I-20 in West Monroe that we will let next year. And just generally speaking, we have spent $500 million on 250 projects covering 665 miles in Northeast Louisiana. And quite frankly, we're just getting started because the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act has given us additional funding in order to continue our efforts in addition to the surpluses that we're running. And by the way, every year, once we pay 25% to the rainy day fund and 10% to the unfunded accrued liability, we divide the rest up and work with the legislature, and it basically works out this way. A third for transportation projects, a third for coastal restoration and protection, and then a third for capital outlay and deferred maintenance. So we're going to have an opportunity to do a lot more transportation going forward. Part of that, you may have seen us make the announcement just a few weeks ago in Baton Rouge. There's $1 billion coming to the state of Louisiana Bridge Fund from the bipartisan infrastructure law. Even though we didn't have to, I decided that we would allocate $270 million to off-system bridges. These are bridges that the state doesn't own because we have, no matter who owns it, we just have one network. We got to get where we're going, and we're inhibiting commerce anytime you have a posted bridge and a loaded truck can't cross it. We will fix 5 times as many bridges over the next 5 years as we would have without this funding. And we're going to do it all over the state of Louisiana, including here in Northeast Louisiana, and I am excited about that. We're going to be closing orphan wells in Louisiana that are emitting methane gas, by the way, many of them, not all of them. And methane is 80 times as efficient as an insulator as CO2. So many experts believe that if we will attack the methane emissions, we'll actually make a bigger dent in the climate change program in the short term. And so we are going to do this by focusing on those wells that emit fugitive methane gas. And we're going to access funding from the bipartisan infrastructure law for that as well. And then we're going to continue to fund it to the degree that we always have through our normal program. But we have 4,600 of those wells. It'll take some time to get to all 4,600, but that's one of the reasons we're going to prioritize those that are actually leaking methane. So we've got a lot going on in terms of infrastructure investment all over the state of Louisiana, and there's so many more things than I discussed. I will tell you that our traditional program funding from, this is the formula funding from the federal government, over 5 years increased by $1 billion. So we would normally get $5 billion over that period of time. We're going to get $6 billion. And we had a lot of ideas for new capacity that would bring online. The inflation rate, the inflation for construction projects is running about 20%. So what we're going to end up using the extra $1 billion is to deliver the program. It's still good to have it, though. Otherwise, we would deliver a lot less. So I appreciate the fact that we have that available to us, and the relationship, the cooperation that we've been able to have with the legislature in figuring out how to get these things funded. Just a couple more points I want to make. I am standing before you so proud of the work we've been able to do to make critical investments. The single biggest reason I ran for governor when I did is because we had disinvested in higher education more than any other state in the nation. It's a recipe for disaster for a state like Louisiana. And when we came into office, there was a $2 billion budget deficit, the largest ever. That's more than 20% of all of the state general fund. And here we are, and I can tell you that the budget for higher education this year is the best that we have ever had. And if you think it doesn't make a difference, I'm just going to ask you to have a conversation with the president of the University of Louisiana at Monroe. I'm going to ask you to ride through that campus. Go talk to the folks at Delta Community College. It allows the president to start thinking in terms of vision, not just what do we have to do to keep the enterprise going, limping along, but how do we transform it? How do we transform this whole region? What partnerships are out there? Where do those other investments need to be made to take advantage of things? And so that's just here in Northeast Louisiana. It's happening all over our state. I'm very proud of that. I can tell you that we also had the best year for early childhood education in terms of our budget that we have ever had. And I just want you to stick with me for just a few seconds, because I think this is self-evident. In Louisiana, we've never educated our citizenry the way that we want them to be educated. But if we will invest significantly in early childhood education and maintain those investments for a generation, we will transform this state to a degree that nobody ever thought possible. Because 90% of a child's brain development happens before they're 5. And so we better start catching those kids when they're 2 and 3 and 4 and having more slots available to them, and then having really good, high-quality early childhood education. Because the truth of the matter is, we educate kids who show up to school ready to learn about as good as anybody in the country. But we have always had more than our fair share of kids who show up to school and they are not ready to learn. So if we want to improve educational outcomes, that's the gap we have to identify. And I am so proud of the $84 million new investment in early childhood education that's going to allow us to do this. But the challenge isn't going to be to do it for a year or two. It's going to be to sustain it over the course of a generation. And then, of course, K through 12, $1,500 teacher pay raise, which is significant because you cannot educate children well without, did I just say children's well? Talking about education, so sorry about that. You can't educate children well if you don't have a highly motivated professional teacher in that classroom. And we have a lot of teacher shortages. I know Ashley's working on that. We've got to make sure that we have those professionals in that classroom and that we make this attractive again for young people. One of the things that concerns me most is we all know that typically educators run in families, and you will have grandparents and their children and the grandchildren all become educators. Too many people now are saying, well, I'm just not interested in doing that, even after mom or dad or both did it. So we got to make sure that we recognize teaching as a profession and we treat these people as professionals and that we pay them as professionals as well. We are paying down our debt. The last 2 years together, we paid $800 million towards an obligation we had to the federal government. We didn't have to pay it over 30 years. $800 million over 2 years. And we wrote checks for that. So that going forward, we can continue to make these other investments that we're talking about. Never have I proposed and never have we spent any non-recurring money on a recurring expenditure in the state of Louisiana. And this past year, we actually appropriated about $300 million of recurring money that's going to one-time expenditures to make sure that we are going to be able to budget prudently going forward. And why do I say that? Because we know that 0.45 cents of the sales tax is going to go away in a couple years. That's $500 million that we will no longer collect. We know that sales tax on vehicles will, instead of flowing to the general fund, flow to the Transportation Trust Fund, which is a good thing because we need more transportation, but it's not going to be there in the general fund. Those two things together, $800 million less in the general fund in a couple of years. My point is this, and I said it this morning, you cannot invest what you do not have. And we know that we have these changes coming that will reduce the amount of general fund that we have. That's why we're trying as hard as we can to grow the economy, to diversify our economy, to make sure that the tax receipts are coming in strong, because we know that this is going to go away. But next year, we will have elections in Louisiana for the legislature and all the statewide offices. And when people tell you what they're never going to do, or what they're always going to do, let's make sure collectively we don't learn the same lessons again that we're just now recovering from. All right, I think my time is just about up. So I'm excited. We have a lot to do. There are challenges that we still are tackling. There are opportunities we're still pursuing. I will not run out of things to do before my term ends in January of 2024. And my commitment to you today is the same as it's always been. I'm going to get up every single day and I'm going to go to work to try to make sure that together we move our state forward. And it's that old saying that your grandparents or your parents, maybe it was a teacher, somebody told you. Everybody here's heard it. One of the things we should always endeavor to do is leave things better than we found it. I am committed and believe, I am very, very confident. When I leave office, the state of Louisiana will be better than on the day that I walked in. You all have made that possible. The legislature has made that possible. Well, let's keep working, because there's still a lot left to do. And I want to thank you all, because I got a special pizza up here today. Donna hates when I say this, but I'm pre-diabetic. And by the way, you might want to get that checked, because I never want to be diabetic. So I wasn't going to eat today. But the people at Johnny's Pizza were nice enough to give me a pizza bowl without any dough in it, and it was delicious. So I want to thank y'all, and just for that, if you'll have me back next year, in my last year in office, I'll be happy to come back and speak again. Thank you so much, and God bless.